Shalom and welcome to this special Talking Memory book launch for Dr. Batya Brutin's newly released book, Arbeit Macht Frei, Representations and Meanings in Art, the last book in her trilogy on Holocaust icons in post-Holocaust visual art. My name is Medin Shachar, and I am an educator and guide at the Ghetto Fighters House and will be your host for today's program. I want to welcome our global audience, and today especially we have a very diverse audience with a special welcome, as always, to the survivors and their families that are with us today. We want to thank everyone for their support and interest in our programs. Today's program is in participation with Remember the Women Institute, Women in the Holocaust International Study Center, Moreshet Holocaust and Study Center, Classrooms Without Borders, Rabin Chair Forum at George Washington University, and the Johannesburg Holocaust and Genocide Center. And now I would like to invite Yigal Cohen, the CEO of the Ghetto Fighters House, to give the opening remarks. Yigal, the floor is yours.
Dear guest, today's event is taking place during difficult days, especially here in the area where the Ghetto Fighters House is located and where we are supposed to be guiding groups and having educational activities. Precisely when the missiles are thundering, it seems important that the muses do not remain silent and that we continue to engage in creativity, art, Holocaust commemoration, and the connection between them. We are honored to launch Dr. Batya Brutin's book, Arbeit Macht Frei. Dr. Brutin is investigating various visual expressions of this press. It is important for us at the Ghetto Fighters House to consider such representation in shaping the memory of the Holocaust, to engage with various media in order to illustrate this history which has lessons for us. The Ghetto Fighters House has a large and moving collection of various works of art. We see art as a universal language which can touch people and influence them. In my view, art can contribute to mutual understanding, empathy, and the creation of a better society. I congratulate you, Batya, on this contribution to knowledge, this fruit of your labor. I wish you continued success. I would like to thank Professor Shelley Hornstein, who will be opening this event and sharing her vast knowledge on Holocaust representation through visual art. A big thank you to Medin Shachar for leading the series Talking Memory. Wishing us a fascinating evening and especially quiet and peaceful days. May all those who are in danger return safely to their families.
Thank you, Yigal. Thank you very much. It's really hard to talk after your words, but it's true. It's very difficult right now in Israel. But I think that one of the things that really helps us to push forward is the ability to reach out to our global community, and to have so many people with us today really is heartwarming, and it gives us a feeling that we are still connected to our friends and family abroad. So thank you, Yigal. Our first speaker is Professor Shelley Hornstein, and we are so honored to have her with us today. And for me especially, is the concept of Holocaust remembrance and commemoration in the public space, the memoryscapes that have been created is a subject that is dynamic and ever-changing. So before I give her the floor, a few words about her important work. She is Senior Scholar and Professor Emerita of Architectural History and Urban Culture at York University in Toronto, Canada. She explores the intersection of memory and place in architectural and heritage sites with themes on tourism and nationhood. Her newest book is Architectural Tourism, Sightseeing, Itineraries, and Cultural Heritage, that was released in 2020. Others include Losing Sight, Architecture, Memory, and Place, that was published in 2011, Impossible Images, Contemporary Art After the Holocaust, published in 2003, Image and Remembrance, Representation and the Holocaust, that was published in 2002, and Capital Culture, a reader on modernist legacies, state institutions, and the values of Art, released in 2000. Currently, she is an ISGAP Research Fellow, the Institute for the Study of Global Anti-Semitism and Policy, and consultant with AEPJ, European Association for the Preservation and Promotion of Jewish Culture and Heritage. She is the recipient of various international awards, fellowships, and guest professorships, and serves on advisory boards for several academic journals. Professor Hornstein, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you so much, Nadine. I want to thank you for helping organize all of this and bringing me into this sphere of fascinating work that you're doing. I also want to thank Yigal for his opening remarks, which are deeply moving. I share that with you, Nadine, as well. It's hard. It's hard to go forward in this climate, but we're going to do everything we can to make sure we continue. And it's an honor ultimately for me to be part of this event and to congratulate Mazel Tov to Batya on this publication for your latest book. And I look forward to the next one, which I understand is in the works and almost ready to be published. So that's extraordinary, very prolific. Today, however, I'm going to look back a little bit and hopefully give some groundwork for the way in which Batya might address her book afterwards. I want to begin with an image. Sorry, it's not going forward. There we go. Thank you. Two images by Christian Boltanski, the late French artist. And I'll begin by saying that between 1985 and 1989, Christian Boltanski's series, these two works are part of that series entitled Monuments or Monumenta, was inspired by memorial stones, memorial sites, pyramids, as you can see, especially on the right, mastabas, steles, all these various solid monuments associated with death. And in his ongoing preoccupation with memory, he uses found objects and archives, here in particular clothing that registers absentness, and children's portraits on the left with naked light bulbs resembling memorial candles. As a Guardian journalist commented during this exhibition on the left in particular, he said, at first his installations can seem almost cozy and charming, yet they punch you in the stomach with the horrors they refuse to let pass. The photographic images of children here are fictitious in the sense that they are not Holocaust victims necessarily, but rather Boltanski relies on archival documents that he would randomly select as well, that speak volumes about how these images can in fact be anyone at any time. Through his memorial and collective memorial practice, often the issue of representing truths is challenged. He said, and this might well be the mantra, by the way, for understanding art that represents the Holocaust that we're looking at today in particular. He said, you can tell the truth more truthfully than the truth itself with art. There is enormous value to digging and mourning a displaced past in order to enter into, or as a process of, remembering, a process of building a kind of sense of identity through the making, and I want to underscore that word, making, of art, but also looking at art. Each artist, like for each of us who looks at art, imagines places, the places we shape in our minds, and we know this to be true when we think of how we read a book. The information we read, if you think about when you read a book, the information that we read is visualized in our mind's eye. And we construct an architecture, a kind of architecture in our imagination, a place that lives only in our memory. Moreover, it's an action that we create. It's that verb to act. It's an action we create in our mind, a performative act, as Yerushalmi suggests in his book, Zachor, to remember. It's an act of remembering. Passive listening, the opposite of action, in other words, that is to say, seeing or looking, is not necessarily a way to remember. But rather, he said, or he suggests, if I extend it to art, to remember is therefore an act of remembering. It's an act that engages through questioning, and it is to participate, again, a verb, to participate in an enactment of memory. And all this becomes important with regard to the notion of representation in art. What this means is that the engagement with an art form, and by the way, art form for me means literary, as well as musical, as well as visual, as well as architectural, as well as sculptural, as well as photographic, and so on. So that engagement is an active practice, to say it once again, not a passive one, that can initiate remembrance. Now, all too often, we hear about the inability, the impossibility even, to represent the Holocaust in images. The appropriateness, the responsibilities involved, the sensitivities, the unreliability of memory, the subjectivities of history, among others. And if we take a look at various historical writings, maybe not even that historical, we can talk about the 2000s, century before ours in a sense, writings by Adorno or Elie Wiesel or Saul Friedlander or James Young or Hayden White. Even if we want to think earlier, even Dante, by the way, and his comment, which was that there are no words for what he saw. There is, therefore, in those writings, a fractious and interminable discussion, however contrasting, about how one cannot represent the ineffable. And yet, images, artistic creations are made, they exist. So today, I would like to present a few examples to you to illustrate the ongoing desire by artists to make, and I underscore again, to make. And we'll conclude with a discussion about the evidence room by Robert Jan van Pelt. In a groundbreaking conference entitled Nazism and the Final Solution, Probing the Limits of Representation, organized by Saul Friedlander in 1990 at UCLA, it was designed, or Saul Friedlander designed it, to elaborate and detail the famous historians' dispute in Germany of the late 1980s. It was a dispute that struggled about how to incorporate the Holocaust and Nazi Germany into German historiography. Huge discussions went on. And Friedlander's conference was organized on the heels, therefore, of this debate and asked this question: how does one represent that which is unknowable? The unknown violence of the Holocaust is truly unknown, he said, and unknowable, and can never be fully represented, lest it diminish the true nature of the violence. And yet, we have been famously warned against the aestheticization also of Holocaust representation, its immorality in the face of atrocity, and the problematic proximity to any sort of, or hint at, visual pleasure. The idea that has dominated is that representing an art form, and again, literature, painting, sculpture, photography, music, and so on, can never fully reveal the scope of violence, hatred, depravity, immorality, and that the representational frameworks directly delineate, give shape to, in other words, our knowledge of that past. And that knowledge is therefore incomplete, partial, subjective, truncated, shaped by memory, therefore limiting, as the argument went, and I say went in the past tense, limiting truth and history, according to those early theories. Does the Holocaust's visibility signal, therefore, a kind of trivialization? What does it mean for someone in a place and in a time that's removed from the site of violence and the time of the events to remember and represent these events in another time and place? Does the corpus of films, books, and art on the Holocaust-related material signal what one scholar had written, an obsessive and unremitting ritual of mourning, or does it reveal a conscious determination to keep that past alive in the present? Gillian Rose, the late Gillian Rose philosopher, challenged this idea in a little book, which is actually a very big book, ideas-wise, entitled Mourning Becomes the Law. And she asks in that book, among other subjects that she brings up, what is it that we do not want to understand? What is it that Holocaust piety once again protects us from understanding? And she continues later on to say, to argue for silence, the banishment of poetry and knowledge. She says poetry and knowledge, and I'll just extend that to art of all kinds. In short, the witness of ineffability, she says, that is, non representability, is to mystify, she says, mystify something we dare not understand. Well, that brings me to Norman Kleeblatt's exhibition. He was curator of the exhibition Mirroring Evil, Nazi Imagery, Recent Art, held in 2002 at the Jewish Museum in New York City. In some ways, this initiated, we could say, at least the contemporary controversy. And as my colleague Risa Greenberg has put it, the exhibition calls into question the museum's role. Is the museum, I should say, obligated to have some kind of moral stature, some kind of moral force? Can a museum contribute to societal change? Can a museum, even should a museum, offer hope? Who has the right or to make or show images that invoke the Holocaust? The boundaries of what can be represented were definitely tested in this exhibition, including, above all, issues of propriety, obscenity, morality, aesthetics. All this was put out there on the table by Norman Kleeblatt. Who determines, in other words, what is acceptable? Which conversations are forbidden or which conversations are categorically shut down, and which are invited to do the opposite by opening up spaces for dialogue? Put another way, what are the limits then of historical discourse, and what is the role, the challenging role of memory? Questions that have been at the root of visual or artistic representation, and yet there seems to be, when we think about literature, little controversy when we think about books that take up the subject in terms of a fictional book about the Holocaust. Well, I'm going to show you another image by Christian Boltanski. This time, it's the work entitled Canada, or Reserve Canada, of 1988, which was commissioned for the Yedessa Hendelys Foundation, Art Foundation in Toronto, which is no longer a foundation open to the public. It's a closed institution, but it still exists as a collection. This piece is by Christian Boltanski, as I mentioned, but I'd like to give you some backstory so that we situate this piece and why I'm bringing it up today. For Hendelys, one of Canada's most important art collectors and curator, an extraordinary curator, we learned that the Boltanski piece was the very first one that she acquired for her collection and on which she based her inaugural exhibition at that foundation in 1988. Boltanski, for his part, tirelessly worked in all of his pieces against forgetting, and this is why I think it is so pertinent that this piece be acquired by Hendelys. And perhaps we can say that the Boltanski Commission and this installation that you see before you was a memorial tribute for Hendelys, who, as a child of survivors, takes her own journey of rememoration, performing, again, thinking back to Zachor and Yerushalmi, performing a critical act of remembering through representation. Hendelys' mother, it should be said, was a prisoner in Auschwitz-Birkenau, where she sorted clothing in the so-called Canada, where murdered prisoners' clothing was sorted because Canada, in a tragically ironic euphemism, was considered the land of plenty. One of the most widespread strategies of how to represent early on, memorials in particular, was in presenting the notion or the concept of absence. That is, the physical place of nothingness, locked inside or between, sometimes between objects, to create a vacuum. That space, in its abstraction, would become the place of remembering, or the place where memory could be facilitated, containers, as it were, of loss. I'm showing you the image of Daniel Libeskind's Jewish Museum in Berlin, and in particular, what he called the void, or there were quite a few voids within this building. If some of you have been there, you will have seen these voids. The museum, which finally opened to the public in 2001, took a while to get off the ground and to figure out what should be displayed within the museum. But finally, when it came to pass, we have these voids, as I mentioned. Early on, when there was budgetary issues for this museum, one of the comments had been that these voids were essentially wasted space. So you can imagine how critical the concept of absentness and voids were to Daniel Libeskind in theorizing about this museum, and how complicated it would have been to convey that it was important to create spaces of nothingness. Let me come back then to the complicated task of representation in another way. The debates about representation as a fraught term are challenged by the suggestion that a form of discourse is bounded by what can be imagined. It is limited by knowledge that is imaginable and is shaped by pre-existing models. This concept of representation assumes that we can only represent that which we can conceive, that which we visualize or know, and that language is limited, therefore, by what is known. Absence, then, in the concept of the void here for Libeskind, becomes the ideal concept for representing, since nothing is represented. But contrary to that, we have a work by Aryeh Gales, his 14 stations, or Heyu Dalet, drawings that are charcoal drawings of aerial views of World War II, on top of and in conjunction with photographs. Aerial photographs taken by both the Nazis and the Allied air forces of the United States, in particular, from thousands of aerial photographs, finally made available when they were declassified only in 1979. Andrea Liss writes about Gales's piece that his technique of repetition, alternating layers of effacing and building up of these images, becomes, and I quote her, an emphatic representation of disbelief and documentation by ironically mirroring the Nazis' own documentary imagery. 14 Stations is a disquieting and respectful installation, she says, that presents the images of the camps as a testimony of atrocity. And on that same note, in discussing the impact of well-known photos of Holocaust atrocities taken by people, photographs taken by people such as Lee Miller or Margaret Bourke-White, we have Carol Zemmel, the late Carol Zemmel, who tells us that the iconic power and enduring force of these images make them emblems, icons, emblems that enable memory of the past. And not only is it the subject matter that shapes that memory, but more importantly, it's the repeated public display that reinforces viewer fascination, complicated term, with and judgment of the horror that they convey. I want to quote Carol Zemmel here. She said that to insist on only the evidentiary status of so-called atrocity pictures obscures the ways in which aesthetic effects deliver historical data, reify fragments of memory, and enable the passage from document to icon. Yvonne Singer, a Canadian artist, in this piece entitled The Veiled Room of 1998, which is silkscreen fabric and video, we have a very different kind of sort of monument, in a sense, with a diaphanous material. It's a diaphanous architecture, really, anything but pyramidal, anything but stone related. And instead, these are semi-transparent veils that wrap a space marked with texts from Freud's standard edition in English and German, including excerpts from The Interpretation of Dreams and Civilization and Its Discontents. On the inside, which is the image on the right, on the inside of this structure, in a sense, politicians, artists, and philosophers, predominantly from the Weimar Republic, are listed. And where this was first shown was in the Weimar Republic, actually, and printed in Fraktur font, which was designed initially for German Emperor Maximilian in the 16th century and resurrected by the Third Reich for the spirit of the new Germany. Different kind of monumental abstraction of the void, if you will. And Melvin Charney, the late Montreal architect and sculptor, in his Visions of the Temple on the left, after Matthias Hafenreffer's reconstruction of the Temple of Jerusalem, you can see the two, one superimposed on the other. The Hafenreffer image is from 1631, and the Melvin Charney image atop of that in the barracks that you can see dates from 1986 in pastel. For Charney, what began in my work, he says, was an attempt to grasp the pervasive image of the death camps culminated in a revelation. The outline of an extermination camp appeared in a reconstruction of Ezekiel's temple of Jerusalem. So he superimposes the plan of Auschwitz death camp. The holy place signals underneath it by superimposition the destruction of a people in that other place. And again, on the right-hand side, Charney again, better if they think they are going to a farm. Batya Brutin is capturing the language of what is known, the tattoo, the Arbeit Macht Frei entrance panel, the iconic images of Anne Frank. And working with what is known, she presents a number of artists, and we'll hear from her, of course, on this, who insist on endlessly struggling with the need to represent this known image in an effort to reverse it, to render it first meaningless, and then by repetition, and second, to make it more concrete, to reify. In the same way, the work that I will end with today by Robert Jan van Pelt is just this, a historical conflation that increases its effectiveness. To quote Beryl Lang, the philosopher, Beryl Lang tells us that the combination of art and history might be argued to have a stronger impact on an audience than if either one had been applied by itself. And so that brings me to what I will talk about, and what I promised to talk about at the outset, but at the end, the evidence room, which was curated by and created by architect and architectural historian Robert Jan van Pelt and his team for the 2016 Venice Architectural Biennale. It's an unusual exhibition, of course, that I hope to point out to you, representing forensic architectural evidence, in a sense, that Van Pelt presented at the libel trial that you see here of Holocaust denier David Irving. Irving sued Deborah Lipstadt, who you see on the left, esteemed Holocaust survivor, and her publisher. He sued also her publisher, Penguin Books, for libel in 1996. In that book, Denying the Holocaust, as you can see, the growing assault on truth and memory, later made into the film that you may have seen called Denial in 2016, Lipstadt identifies Irving and other revisionists and Hitler apologists who authoritatively deny the mass murder of Jews during the Second World War. Van Pelt, for his part, was called in as an expert witness to this trial to testify about the role of architecture, the role that architecture played for the Nazi project, and specifically in the construction of the gas chambers at Auschwitz. So, in this white room, which, by the way, began at the Venice Architecture Biennale, but traveled subsequently in Canada and the United States, in this white room are architectural elements as sculpture. Along the walls are whited plaster tablets that you see before you with what appears to be white raised tile. It now has a life of its own. It's moving ahead. But these images of text, or the plaster sculptural bas-relief, if you will, sculptural elements, force us to look very closely, force us to see something that otherwise we may not see. Typically, architectural drawings that are displayed in exhibitions, I will say very candidly, are quite boring to look at. But in this particular instance, when we have sculptural work based on the architectural drawings with limited ability to see, we are forced to look twice, forced to look more than twice to see. These tablets are sculptural casts, if you will, of blueprints, architectural letters, contractor bills, photographs, drawings, 3D sculptures really as well, which you can see here. Replicas, in a sense, objects of evidence, such as a gas column and a gas-tight hatch, a ladder, and a gas chamber door. How do these objects that are not the objects themselves, but rather sculptural objects, present what was absent? What is absent? What is truth? What is authenticity? through the representation of this so-called evidence. By transforming the objects and architectural drawings into plaster sculptures installed in this white cube space, by making everything white inside the white cube, by introducing plaster molds, plaster sculptural effects, if you will, to show the viewer architectural drawings of Auschwitz architects of the notorious death camp, we are being made, and I'll say it once again, to look twice. The sculptural representations of architecture and architectural drawings force us to see what we would otherwise take to be invisible architecture. So to conclude, let me give you some thoughts by Simon Schama, who was asked to preside over the 75th anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz in 2020. He asks the following, and I will quote you his text, but his words are, and to bring it right up to this contemporary moment, continue to ring true to us today. And he said, "What then is the purpose of acts of remembrance? To begin with," he says, "in an age of disinformation, when Holocaust denial has become commonplace and more are taken in by the demonizing forgery of the protocols of the elders of Zion through online access to the libel, at a time when the power of evidence has to contend with the intoxication of malignant belief," this is all written in 2020, "at a moment when those who went through the tormenting fires themselves are leaving us, it is essential that the cautionary history be imprinted in the minds of the future in the act of telling." Thank you.
Thank you, Shelley, for really an incredible introduction to our program today. There are two questions, but we're going to save them for the end. So I wrote them down. I won't forget them. You can look and see them in the chat box. And we're going to move on to our next speaker, to Dr. Batya Brutin, and we are gathered here today to celebrate the release of her latest book, which she will be talking about in her talk. Again, I am personally delighted, I don't know if that's the right word, I couldn't find another word, that the Ghetto Fighters House, along with our partners, are doing this online book launch, because she really is one of Israel's most knowledgeable scholars about Holocaust visual art and memory spaces, paving the way for so many, such as myself. I've learned so much from her work and based much of my research on her findings. Till this day, just a few weeks ago, I went back to one of her first books that I read to check the facts about a monument here in Israel. So that's a personal point for me. Having her trilogy available in English allows a broader audience to learn from her research, and I will put links to every one of the books in the chat box as you're listening to her presentation. So just a short introduction, and it's short because there's so much to say about Dr. Batya Brutin. She is a researcher of art during and after the Holocaust and Holocaust monuments in Israel and worldwide. Between 2000 and 2018, she was the director of the Holocaust Teaching in Israeli Society program at Beit Berl Academic College in Israel. She published academic books, essays, and educational materials, and curated art exhibitions on the above-mentioned subjects. Between 2002 and 2013, she organized 6 international conferences about women and the Holocaust, a joint project by Beit Berl Academic College, Bet Theresienstadt, and Bet Lochamei Ghettoot, the Ghetto Fighters House in Israel. Since 2018, she is a research associate at the Abraham and Edita Spiegel Family Chair in Holocaust Research that's located in the Bar Ilan University. In 2018, she received the Yad Vashem Award for Lifetime Achievement in the field of Holocaust education. Since 2022, Dr. Brutin is a member of the Academic Steering Committee of WISC, Women in the Holocaust International Studies Center at Moreshet Israel. Moreshet is one of our partners today as well. So with that, I will give the floor to Batya.
This evening could not have taken place without the recognition by Yigal Cohen, CEO of Ghetto Fighters House, of the importance of presenting this topic to the public, and of course with all the institutions that supported it. Thank you, Medine, for composing and leading this evening. Thanks to Professor Hornstein for agreeing to participate in this event. Thanks to my immediate and extended family, my friends, colleagues, and the audience who honored me with their participation in this important event. The trigger to my engaging with the topic of the Holocaust began with, with my mother's yellow Star of David with the word Jude in the center, which my mother, Ruth Fritz First, was forced to wear by the Nazis during the Holocaust. It symbolizes, for me, her experience during the Holocaust, which has accompanied me since my childhood and has influenced me first unconsciously and later with great awareness. Each of my books in the trilogy always started with one or two triggers. Two triggers that led me to my research about Anne Frank and the Warsaw Ghetto Boy were different. One was personal, while the other was general. The image of Anne Frank was the story my mother used to tell us when we were children. She was working as a seamstress under a fictional identity in a small sewing workshop for Nazi uniforms on Prinsengracht Street in Amsterdam after she fled from Nazi Germany in 1938 after Kristallnacht. One day, she saw a Jewish family taking out from their hiding place, put on a truck, and sent to the camp. After this event, my mother ran away and hid in the boat owned by Dutch acquaintances for several months. After reading Anne Frank's diary as an adolescent, I realized that my mother had witnessed Frank's family being taken out of their hiding place. The other trigger was for the Warsaw Ghetto Boy when I met Samuel Beck, a Holocaust survivor artist in 2002, who lectured about his art influenced by the photograph of the little boy from the Warsaw Ghetto in short pants, boots, coat, and cap with his hand raised and a Nazi soldier pointing his submachine gun at him. When I looked for artworks referring to the images of Anne Frank and the Warsaw Ghetto Boy, I discovered that many artists used these two images. Based on this exploration, I wrote the first book of the trilogy. The trigger to my second book, Etched in Flesh and Soul, the Auschwitz Number in Art, arose from my doctoral research about the art of second-generation Israeli artists, where I noticed that the artists, Auschwitz survivors' children, refer to their parents' number on their forearm. Seeing those artworks raised a few thoughts and questions. Does the phenomena of using the Auschwitz number exist in the art of other non-second generation artists in other places as well? To what extent? What meanings and messages do they convey using the Auschwitz number in their art? How does the Auschwitz number serve to preserve the memory of the Holocaust and Auschwitz events? All these questions fascinated me So I continued researching the use of the Auschwitz number image in art, and my study extended to the 4 chapters of this book. The trigger to my 3rd book, Arbeit Macht Frei, Representations and Meanings in Art, is my visits to the Memorial and Museum Sachsenhausen in Germany and to the Auschwitz-Birkenau State Museum in Poland, where I saw for the first time the inscriptions Arbeit macht frei, work sets you free. Researching the artistic presentations of the Holocaust in visual art, I realized that the inscription Arbeit macht frei appears in many artworks. While collecting materials, I understood that using this inscription is widespread. It exists in the art of Jewish and non-Jewish artists, and the meanings, messages, and purposes are diverse. My study extended to the 5 chapters of this book. The artwork on the book's cover is by Dr. Ayana Friedman, who is with us here. And I thank her for letting me utilize it on my book cover. Now, let us delve into the book. Arbeit macht frei was a familiar German saying in various forms among German and German Swiss peasants as part of the Protestant labor ethic. The origin of the inscription is, is in the name of a novel from 1873 written by the German philologist and novelist Lawrence Diefenbach. In its original meaning, the slogan in the novel was used to describe how gamblers and crooks go through a process of repentance and adopt moral norms of honesty, productive work that creates value and benefit for them and for their environment. The novel's title is based on the Gospel of John 8:32 verse, and I quote, "The truth will set you free," end of quote. In 1928, the government of the Weimar Republic adopted the slogan Arbeit macht frei as an encouraging message for its proactive work policy, intending to reduce unemployment in post-World War I Germany. In fact, following their rise to power in 1933, the Nazis continued to use the slogan in its original meaning as part of their efforts to reduce the enormous level of unemployment that still existed in Germany. When the Nazis established concentration camps for descendants in Germany, it was only natural for them to inscribe Arbeit macht frei on the camp gates. However, this time they used it as a deception and irony to instill false hopes in the prisoner's mind, thereby preventing resistance and reaction by the prisoners. Theodor Eicke, commander of the Dachau concentration camp, was the first to place the inscription Arbeit Macht Frei on the Dachau concentration camp gate on October 1st, 1933. And other camps soon followed. Sachsenhausen, Flossenberg, Grossrosen. The Nazis continues this trend after the invasion to Czechoslovakia, when they established the Theresienstadt ghetto camp and placed the inscription on the small foresters. After the occupation of Poland and the establishment of the Auschwitz I camp, the same slogan was positioned on top of the camp entrance gate. In the mid-1940s, Rudolf Höss, who was familiar with the inscription in Dachau and Sachsenhausen because he served in both camps during various assignments, charged that the Auschwitz gate should also have the same inscription. The metal workshop at the camp was assigned to this task. Kurt Müller, the metal workshop capo, designed the inscription by drawing its shape on the ground, and a Polish prisoner, master blacksmith, Jan Liwacz, formed the letters of the inscription from the pipes used for the camp's water distribution system. The letter B was installed upside down. Many prisoners interpreted this as an act of resistance. However, it is more likely that it was accidental. Nevertheless, it became essential to the camp prisoners' life existence. The words Arbeit Macht Frei in the concentration camps in Germany were meant to re-educate opponents of Nazi rule in the ways of Nazi ideology, while the purpose of the Arbeit Macht Frei inscription on Nazi German concentration camp, especially Auschwitz I in Poland, was meant to humiliate, oppress, and discourage the prisoners. Israel Gutman, a Polish-born Israeli historian and a Holocaust survivor, explained, "Whoever passed through the gate that bears the inscription, charged with falsehood, cynicism, and ridicule, Arbeit Macht Frei, and the prisoner is completely deprived of his human existence. Within minutes, the prisoner at once lost his name, his identity, his family, his home, his clothes, his body hair, his precious souvenirs in the form of a photograph or a letter that connected him with his past, and the freedom to move, to decide where he would go, to be a master of his destiny and future." The inscription, Arbeit Macht Frei, especially the one in Auschwitz I, has become a symbolic image of the Holocaust in general and of the Nazi camps in particular. It is used by artists to depict the harsh reality of imprisonment in the camps and to engage with the denial of human freedom due to their conditions and violence and a oppressive regime. This book, Arbeit Macht Frei, is in art history. Therefore, it emphasizes the visual expression of the topic and images of the artworks. Its method combines an artistic biographic approach and socio-historical reference to create a link between the iconographic and stylistic artistic debate and the historical time and the social culture context in which the artworks were created. In this way, we can simultaneously see the personal point of view of each artist and learn about the general trends and processes indicating the attitude of the artist to the Arbeit Macht Frei image as an artistic motif. The questions I tried to answer in this book are: how have the artists used the image of the inscription Arbeit Macht Frei to represent the Holocaust? What messages and meanings do the artists deal with through this image? To what extent have the artists used the Arbeit Macht Frei image to commemorate the Holocaust? Surveys and examinations of many artworks pinpoint that a mutual topic have engaged the artist and that they have all want to express them in their artistic reaction. The artist put the Arbeit Macht Frei image in a visual and contextual environment according to the subject they choose to depict concerning the Holocaust's legacy and memory. Artists among the prisoners who saw these words and experienced the camp referring to the notorious inscription in their art. They were with talent, experience, and tool to visually prove the events in the camps in the shadow of the deceptive message, and also to allow us to better understand the terrible camp reality and to convey it to the next generation. Peter Edel, a German artist with Jewish roots, referred to the Auschwitz One Gate slogan in a personal approach. In a double self-portrait, he depicted himself in the background as an earnest young man wearing a suit and pointing at a person he has become, an emaciated old man with a shaved head wearing a prisoner's uniform with his prisoner number 164145 on it. His face has changed dramatically. He is emaciated and weak by the harsh camp conditions of hunger and hard physical labor. His facial features change so much that he cannot recognize himself. The German caption on the bottom left side reads, "Wer ist das? Du? Ich? Ja? Who is there? You? I? Yes?" Expressing the artist's wonder at what he has become. In the background, the camp gate with the inscription can be seen only partly and vaguely, emphasizing the scene's location and underscoring the source of the artist's condition that he endured in the camp. Artists who were in the concentration camp focused on describing the central experiences that took place there. The march to work, forced labor, violence against prisoners, executions in the camp, and emaciation because of the living conditions in the camp. One of the common description among the camp survivor artists was the depiction of marching to work every morning outside the camp. The work allowed the prisoners to maintain a regular schedule that helped them get through the horrors of the camp every day. At the same time, it was possible to maintain sanity because the hard work kept away, even for a while, the complex thought of oppressing the body and spirit. Several artists have portrayed these elements of life in the camp, utilizing the Arbeit Macht Frei image, emphasize the specific location of the depiction and to contrast the sense of the words themselves. For example, a Polish political prisoner artist, Władysław Siwek, depicted the subject of marching out of the camp for slave labor through the gate with the notorious deceptive inscription. Against the background of the camp building and a single tree, he shows the prisoners arranged in rows of 5 to make it easier to count them, marching towards the gate with the infamous slogan. On both sides of the image, Nazi soldiers are watching and counting the prisoners. The prisoners' orchestra, which played German folk music, accompanied them when they left for work and returned to the camp in the evening, is partly visible to the right of the prisoners. The camp's prisoners experience violence of various kinds, which are expressed in many artworks. For example, Polish artist Jan Baraszkomski depicted the beating of a prisoner by Nazi guard in Dachau, where he was imprisoned. The Nazi guard is beating the prisoner at work with a club as he drops the wheelbarrow full of bricks. In the background, the artist added the Arbeit Macht Frei inscription from Dachau to emphasize the location of the scene and to stress the Nazi system of the concentration camps. Unlike the artworks shown before, Slovak-born Israeli sculptor and Holocaust survivor Elza Polak portrayed the Auschwitz gate with the famous inscription in a symbolic and schematic style in several of her sculptures. For example, in this sculpture, she created a vertical rectangular gate with the words Arbeit Macht Frei on top of it. The words Arbeit and Frei are large, and the word Macht is smaller, intensifying the slogan's falsity. Within the gate, Polak situated a cluster of expressive figures crowded together to represent the victims who went through the gate, and only some of them survived. American Jewish artist Aaron Morgan with no direct connection to the Holocaust, expressed his strong feeling about the fate of the Jewish people during the Holocaust in his Holocaust series. For example, in this painting, against the background of the crematoria in Auschwitz, he depicted the camp gate with the well-known inscription. Under it, Morgan portrayed a mound composed of 35 faceless bodies heaped one on top of the other, representing the 6 million Jews murdered in the Holocaust. Morgan explained that many of the figures shown in the painting could easily have been his family members who perished in the Holocaust. So this work for him is a visual prayer for those that died at the hands of the Nazis during the Holocaust. Now, almost 80 years after the Holocaust, it is apparent that its impact has carried over into the works of artists of second generation descendants of Holocaust survivors as well. Second generation artists whose parents survived Auschwitz have used the Auschwitz I gate inscription as a motif in their art, mainly for a personal point of view. For example, Chaim Maor, who could not stop thinking about his father's experience in Auschwitz, deals with the Auschwitz gate signed directly. He arranged 3 wooden panels, 2 on both sides, with an oblong shape at the top, enclosed with a black metal arc over a blue panel, and a vertical wooden colored rectangular panel in the center. The side panels are reminiscent of the tablets of the covenant, representing the Jewish people and their law. The central panels divides them, and on the top of it is a copper portrait in profile of Susanna, Maor's German friend. She represents the German who brought the Holocaust disaster upon the Jewish people. Maor has disassembled the slogan Arbeit Macht Frei into 3 words and placed each on a different panel. Through this separation, every word comes to express a new meaning. Arbeit, work. The Nazis used the Jews for forced labor, Macht, making. The Nazi carried out the murder of the Jews. And Frei, freedom, the Nazis stole liberty from the Jews. Another example of an artist who integrated the slogan into several of her paintings is Helen Carroll, a New Zealander artist and daughter of Holocaust survivors. This painting is one of the alphabet series of 26 paintings. By the way, it was presented at Beit Lochamei HaGetaot. The painting is divided into 3 distinct parts. The upper part is connected to her cultural belonging to New Zealand in cheerful, vivid colors. Barbed wire on a red background places a border between the parts, referring to the barbed wire that enclosed Auschwitz and the danger and death in the camp. The lower part is covered with tones of gray color and contains a symbolic Auschwitz Gate slogan on a yellow background. The yellow color is a reminder of the yellow Star of David the Jews were forced to wear prior to their captivity in the camps, both to mark them and to humiliate and oppress them. The white dove of peace is flying across the gate, symbolizing light amidst darkness. The stripe on the right, I'm talking about this stripe, contains random words from the artist's vocabulary referring to the Holocaust. Some artists used the Auschwitz I gate inscription as a symbol representing the Holocaust in a universal context and to express their ideas, thoughts, and messages about atrocities, violence, murder, and the violation of human rights in general. For example, contemporary Italian satirical artist Alessandro Palombo used the Auschwitz number in the series of drawing Never Again, together with characters from the long-running American animated sitcom television series. Homer, Marge, Bart, Lisa, and Maggie Simpson are standing in front of the Arbeit Macht Frei inscription on the Auschwitz camp gate. They are wearing striped prisoner's uniform and yellow Star of David with the word Jude on their chest. Their faces are frightened. In doing so, the artist links the iconography of the Holocaust with the graphic of late 20th and 21st century Western popular culture to mark the 17th anniversary of the liberation of the Nazi death camps. Using the well-known Simpsons figures, the artist immediately captures the spectator's attention and raises awareness of dissentment against intolerance, push to inhumanity, as Palombo stated. Several artists have paraphrased the words of the original inscription, presenting it in non-German language, such as Hebrew, Portuguese, Chinese, and English, to convey a different message. For example, Nechama Golan, daughter of Holocaust survivor artists, conveyed a moral message when changing the gate's slogan to the Hebrew verse from the book of Leviticus, Ve'ahavta l'racha kamocha, love thy neighbor as thyself. The artist emphasizes two messages through the new inscription on the gate. First, is the fact that the Nazis did not behave according to these moral standards laid out in the Leviticus quote, and ask us not to forget. The second message is the reminder to visitors who pass through this open gate, which welcomes them to enter, of the value of human love to prevent the reoccurring of the events such as the Holocaust. The image of the Auschwitz I gate has served some artists as a way to refer to political crises around the world. Italian political cartoonist Mario Improta referred to Boris Johnson's reaffirmation that the United Kingdom would withdraw from the EU on October 31st, 2019, with or without an agreement. He featured Boris Johnson wearing striped garment like a camp prisoner, waving the British Union flag in a leap of victory as he flees a death camp, which looms behind him. The camp gate bears the inscription European Union instead of the original slogan. This description sparked a heated controversy and criticism due to its comparison of the European Union to Nazi concentration camps. And the last example that I would like to show tonight is by Carlos Latouf, a Brazilian political activist and cartoonist with Arab roots who has used the notorious inscription to convey political and critical messages concerning the Israeli-Palestinian conflicts. He redrew the gate of the Nazi death camp as the entrance to Palestine. Latouf implies that the state of Israel treats the Palestinian in the same way that the Nazis treated the Jewish people. He wants to draw the world's attention to the situation of the Palestinians by using in an overly simplistic way, I would say, a well-known symbol for the Nazi atrocities committed against the Jewish people, even though it is not comparable. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Batya. Thank you so much for introducing us to all three books. Actually, there was a question, actually, there was a whole conversation about where can you get the books? And someone said maybe it will be available in different libraries. If you have any idea about where books may be available, people would like to know that. I saw one question in the chat box that maybe
Just a second, Medine, just a second. If you want to purchase the book, go either to Amazon.
I gave the link to everybody to go in to order. But if they don't,
but to read the book, they can look for the book in libraries in Israel and the Library of Congress.
Yeah, that's what somebody said, to look for the loaning, interlibrary loaning, to see where it is in public libraries. So that was a great answer. But I
a lot of libraries purchased
right now.
the book.
What?
A lot of libraries, as I know, purchased the book.
That's what I suggest. The library is still a great place to get a book. Absolutely. I don't see questions. There was one question about the images that Shelley presented. Someone was saying if there was a possibility, the 12 images that you showed, if there was any way to show one image, because it was difficult to see the whole concept. So I don't know if you have a slide like that to pull out, but or if there are a reference to where they can see it.
I have also just one comment for Shelley.
Mm-hmm.
The Berlin Monument, the Berlin Museum slide that you showed, it's the Menashe Kadishman's faces.
Yes, of course.
Somebody mentioned that.
And I'll just add to that initially when the museum first opened, they allowed everyone to walk on the faces, on them. Now, no more, finished.
No, people didn't want to.
Well, of course, because there's the taboo and so on, but it was permitted at the beginning, which is interesting. Anyway, it's an aside. But with regard to the images for the the evidence room. The easiest thing I think to do for whoever asked the question is to go just Google the evidence room by Robert Jan van Pelt. You should come up with all kinds of images on the website. It's
No, they
out
were
there.
talking about the aerial views that you showed, the 12 aerial views that were superimposed on a picture. And
Oh, that's Ariel Gallet. Also on the website, Ariel Gallet, or you can contact him. He's got his own website, which you'll find if you Google his name. And he's wonderfully communicative and he loves to share information. So if you want to contact him, even by email, he will probably send you images or send you to locations where the images can be found.
wonderful. So I think if I don't see questions, I will ask one question. And I think it connects to what Batya said with her last slide. I wonder when we talk about commemoration and we talk about, artistic freedom and poetic license, if we are risking at any point by using art as opposed to a document or a picture, if we're risking losing the actual historical importance of the message that's trying to be brought through the art or through an exhibition, and maybe it's being adopted and moved on to another agenda. That's always my question. We build these very abstract monuments, for example, and people just don't get it, and so they'll just adopt it for something else. And I even see it where I work in the museum. Sometimes a guide will make up a story thinking, oh yeah, I heard that story from another guy and I heard that from another guy, but what? So I'm just wondering for both of you, what's your take on this concept that art is a medium that you said it's even tells more truth than the truth itself, but maybe it also takes away from the authenticity that we expect from an artifact or a document. So the question is for both of you.
Gotcha.
Shelley, no, you
Well, yes, I agree with you. I will say, for example, and in fact, Gillian Rose wrote about this. Schindler's List, when the movie came out, what bothered me about that film, as wonderful as it was to open up a discussion, let's say, unfortunately, it shut down all the questions that you would ask afterwards. In other words, it was so, to some who saw it, and I heard this by many who saw it, it was complete in the sense that you didn't need to do any further investigation. You were told the whole story, end of story. And that comes back to your point, Madine. It's exactly that. It limited conversation. It didn't open the dialogue. It closed the dialogue. So how do we get around that? And I think my simplistic maybe answer is that all of these things are parts of a piece and nothing should be seen singularly. Everything needs to be seen in conjunction with everything else. Nothing can stand on its own. There is no one document. No, there is no one monument. There's no one artwork that can say it all. And we know this to be true because there are so many thousands and thousands and thousands of ways in which information, memories, history, all of that is shared about the Holocaust. And so we have to keep adding to the hopper. We have to keep expanding the boundaries in order to understand or to begin to try to understand even a small part of it.
I wrote that down. No, I understand exactly what you're saying. It's still a very slippery slope, but like you're
It
saying,
is.
when
It
you
is.
look at it
Yes.
as a piece of, a whole, then yeah, it makes absolute sense to be able
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
look at it with that perspective. Batya, by the way, Batya, there is a question about your mother.
yes.
Yeah, someone said
What was the
because of
question?
the
And
door
who
of
is asking?
it says your mother stood before a door of the text voor meisjes for girls. Did she have any Dutch connection? But that's what you said, that she was from Holland.
My mother fled from Germany after
Yeah.
Kristallnacht, 1938, to the Netherlands. First, she was in an orphanage house, and she was on the Kindertransport to London, but I don't know how her mother appeared at the train station and recognized them, my mother and her sister and her brother, by the horse toy that my uncle, yes, her brother, hold under his arm. She didn't recognize her children, only by the horse,
Yes.
and she took them out of the line and took them. Oh, it's a long story, but and then it's a very long story, and then they lived together in Amsterdam, running away, running away, and she was hiding, as I told before, in a boat for a long time, almost a year.
Yeah, and
As
again,
she
Anna Frank also came from Germany, so there's also another connection there when you said the family maybe saw.
by the way, she wore the uh, German Star of David with the word
Wow.
Jude.
Huh.
That was mandatory for the German Jews to wear when they fled to the Netherlands or to Belgium or to any other places in Europe to recognize them. And
That's
well, the picture that I put
yeah, yeah,
is the real one, which I inherited it from my dear mother.
yeah. So you're saying that's actually the German version and not
That's
the
Jude. Hmm.
Dutch.
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
Wow.
And for the artist, by the way, I just want to add a little bit to what Shelley said. Um, they all Most of the artists have purpose for their art, and sometimes it's in the open, and sometimes it's concealed. And we as researchers, we need to interview them and to see what they say about the artwork, and we have to put it in context of time and place. Uh, of course, an historical time frame, and also their personal story and their connection to the Holocaust. It's a complex of components that we have to take into consideration when we look at such an artwork. And I see my advisor in the crowd, and that's what she taught us. I mean, you
There's a
can
question.
unmute Professor Amishai Meislich if you want.
Ah,
If she's
Um,
still here, I don't know if she's still here, but you can unmute her. She can add a lot more.
I don't know if she's still here. Maybe Yoni can check while we're talking. There was actually a specific question, Batya, which is very interesting. Someone said, I was surprised to hear Batya ascribe working outside of the camps with two positive aspects. I suspect that people who are literally worked to death would not agree with you. Did I misinterpret what you said? And I just want to add, before you answer the question, it reminds me of research that I did on diaries in the Warsaw Ghetto. And Tzivia Lubinkin actually stated that if you worked, you had an island of life.
Yeah,
Just to answer the
for a while.
question from that,
Not
yeah,
not necessarily
yeah. But what I wrote, what I
for
discovered in my
good,
research,
but
is that
yeah. And I see Professor Meislich,
she's here.
Amishai Meislich, she's
I'm
still
here.
here. Hi.
Oh,
Hi.
we haven't.
Hi.
Anyway, what I wanted to say is that,
Can Yeah, if you
the
want to
question
add
is to
something,
Batya. Oh,
Ziva,
hi.
that would
Hello.
be our pleasure.
So if you want to relate to the question about working, uh, someone said that maybe they didn't understand what you were saying. I absolutely understood what you were saying. Whoever worked survived at that moment.
Yes. At that moment,
At that
exactly.
moment, yeah, in
Yeah,
time.
exactly.
Most didn't
And
survive.
also, psychologically, when you work for a while, you can um, not to think about the hard situation that you are um, in it. That's what the Holocaust survivors told us.
Yeah. Well, if your advisor is
Mhm.
Amishai wants to add something before we say goodbye.
No, I thought it was very lovely lectures, and I wish Batya to continue in her way.
Yeah, I agree with you. I agree with you. You're the mentor, but I'm
He's
still
in the
a
background,
student.
don't worry.
That this is a wonderful opportunity. First of all, Batya, I don't know how many years I've known you, but to have this opportunity to finally have you give a presentation in English for us, and thank you,
Okay.
and of course for this trilogy that you produced. And I know you got a Lifetime Achievement Award, but Batya is not finished. I don't know why you
No,
got it so
no,
early. That's
no.
fine. But there's another book on the way, so maybe we have another opportunity to speak. And
I,
and
I I just want to say that I see really dearest people in the audience. I see Dalia Ofer and I see
Mhm.
Sonia and who else? I don't know. I saw Ronnie Dotan and I saw Meir and I mean all my and Beverly and
And Beverly is here. Yep.
yeah, I mean thank you so much for coming, really.
Really, it was a
And
really,
Rachel Perry, I think
yes, Rachel is here. We were talking.
I cannot even go through the names so fast, but
Yeah.
thank you so much for joining the evening,
And
really.
thank you so much for your work. And Shelley, thank you so much for the introduction. I think that Batya knew exactly what she wanted. And I think just by seeing the program, this is not an ego situation here.
No,
The program worked so well,
I'm so,
both of you.
I'm so delighted to meet you,
Yeah.
Batya.
And to me,
Of course.
yeah,
It's
absolutely, absolutely, and that's exactly what we want with the Talking Memory series. Isn't at the beginning, I only brought people I knew, and then slowly but surely, we started reaching out, and I've learned so much. I started reading your work and watching lectures. So here we are. I want to thank our audience, those that are still
yes,
with us. You can see in the
definitely.
chat, people are still saying thank you and for the lectures. And I want to thank them for being here and for coming and supporting us. And again, to our two speakers, to Shelley Hornstein and to Batya Brutin. And Batya, again, Mazal Tov.
Thank you
Uh,
very much.
we're looking forward for the next book to come out.
Very soon.
And with that, I want to say shalom to everyone and thank you again for being with us.
Thank you,
Have a
so much.
peaceful day.
Medine. Thank you, Medine.